Just for later.
Hiya.
Welcome to week, I want to say 7, section 6 maybe. I like starting off with an Are there any questions starting off? No. I thought I'd try something a little different this time, where I'll go through the assignment that was due on Monday. Was it? Was it due on Monday?
Did you
Where I'll
put
go.
ours and discover there were horrible answers? Is that
No. I just thought there might be questions, so I thought I'd go through them and see if you got any. So the first one was to take the every function and to take the anonymous function that's in here and actually give it a name and then put it in. Did anyone have a problem with that? This was just like var myfun equals this. And then every myfun. Does that make sense?
right? Because you're naming the function, and then you're calling the
Yeah.
function by the name of whatever you
Yeah. All right, great.
gave. But why did you set it up as a variable instead of just making a function?
Because of the weird way that function works. If you do that instead, it makes it global. It pulls it out of scope, and it also, what's the word? It yanks it to the top, so it doesn't matter where you put it. It'll just pull it out of scope and process it first, which I think can be confusing sometimes. So I like to always define my functions that way. All right, what is this one? This one was like add a couple of keys to an object literal, and and then iterate over it using for in. Is everyone here nerdy enough to know who Bill Adama is?
I can imagine that's what you want.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, do I get points off because I've never watched Battlestar?
No, you actually get points for that. You would have gotten extra points if you only watched season 1 and then didn't watch anything after that. So adding keys, we understand that's just a matter of doing that. Oh, address is already there. That's another thing. Extra points if you can tell me what his middle name is. And then to run through it, we know it's a for. Yeah, that's a stylistic thing.
What is? So
Actually, that's a good question. It might be an error if I'm using use strict. I kind of don't think it is, but I want to find out now. It is not an error. It's one of those, religious disputes where You know, do you use tabs or spaces? Do you end your lists with commas? I honestly usually don't, but I don't know why I did just there. It makes it easier because if you happen to copy paste things in, if you didn't have it and you were adding something to the end, you might forget to add that comma. And then that would cause an error by not having that comma there. So by putting it at the end of every one of them, it makes that less likely to happen. And then, can somebody tell me, since you all know how to do it, how to do the for in loop that would run through this? It's person info. So for every? No, not for this one. This is just a for in. So I think
So is it for
you said
person info?
key, yeah. Key in person info. And then one thing I like to do is just declare the value right off the bat. So then you have a key value pair. And then we like console log key. Not dot, plus. Did we all get that right? You can just nod yes. And all right, that was it for this one. For key in object. Yeah, he gave you that already. Okay. Great. The third one was using local storage. Do we understand that?
No, I do not understand.
No? So we've got person info object. We make a JSON string out of it. Do we know what that is? It's a string representation of the object. No? So this, if I say console log person info, that's going to give me the object person info.
Which is already a variable.
So it's the object with this data inside of these key value pairs inside of it: first name, last name, address, email. Now after it's stringified, it's going to look very similar but it's actually a string, not an object.
So stringify, this is just a command that you're putting it into.
Yeah, we're running the stringify command on that object,
Okay.
which is turning the data in that object into a string. And then once it's a string, we can put it into local storage. Because local storage can't handle complex structures like an object.
And local storage is what?
Local storage is a way to store things that stays persistent from when you go to a website and when you come back. So,
So I was confused on this one from the perspective of whether it's cached as like a cookie. Like how does local storage?
it's like a cookie, yes, but it's not a cookie.
So if I close my browser and I go back into my exit completely out and open my browser back up.
Yes,
Is
it
that-
should still be there, yeah. The only time local storage is ever wiped is when the user wipes it, or when there's a security update to the browser that requires it to be wiped.
So like clearing of the
So basically
history,
never.
Like, what would wipe it?
The only thing that would wipe it is if you actually did it yourself.
Oh, right? Like not none of the browser.
I forget what it is. Is it empty or clear?
Oh, parse?
It might be clear. All right. Local storage empty.
So that implies some grief though.
It's clear. I thought it was empty before. It's actually clear. Okay.
When would you use this over
When would you use what?
storage?
Local storage? Whenever you want data to be persistent. Let's say you have a form and you're entering the data into the form and you submit the form, and then you went back to that form later. No, maybe that might be a bad example. Okay, say you submit it and you went back to it and you wanted to see all the data still in it. You could save it in local storage, and then when you went back to it, it would still have the data. Or say you were doing a form, that's what it is,
Saving it before-
and you saved before you submitted. So you would save the state of that form, and then when you came back to it, you could continue and then submit the form. That's a more useful use of it.
You would use that opposed to cookies at that point, because it's not.
Yes.
But there's no way, none of those little pretty buttons up on the top would allow you to clear it.
None of these?
No, all the way up. History is one thing.
Oh, yeah, clearing the cache.
So that does.
That does do it. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So it's
Sorry.
part of the cache.
Sorry, you asked that like 5 minutes ago, and I didn't answer you right.
So local storage is considered part of the cache.
Yes.
If you restart the computer, it's still there.
Yes.
So
The same way a cookie is. I don't know exactly where it lives now. Somewhere in the magical browser.
So in this example, you're writing the object to local storage, which makes it a string and no longer an object. And so
Well, you have to make it into a string before you write it to local storage. But yeah.
You have to take it really
If you wrote it with the quotes around the keys and so forth, like, as if it were JSON, could you skip the stringify step there?
You mean if you wrote the object like this with quotes around everything? Or do you mean if?
Yeah, no, if you wrote the quotes around everything, basically mirroring the string format. Like if you wrote it as in JSON format.
If I did
That's
this,
a different type still.
if I did this, I could do it maybe. But that's making it a string. And I'm not sure of your question.
So, well, because it sounds like JavaScript kind of casts things as you're using them. So I'm just wondering if you had written it like that and you passed it in as person info to the local storage, whether it would pass it as a string automatically.
No, it won't. You'll end up with like the word object in your.
So you're taking this object and you're turning it into a string and you pass it into local storage. And then what happens? Because now when the system goes to retrieve it again, it's a string, it's not an object.
Right. Then you have to use the other method, which is probably part of this assignment. Let's see. Your task is to do the opposite. Retrieve the string. Yeah, retrieve the string from local storage using getItem, and output it to the page using the log function. So let's say we've done this. Locals. Let's just console log all of local storage. And clear up these, because we don't need this. And make this bigger so So this is what's in storage right now. One object, or I'm sorry, one key of person with the value of this string. So if I removed this set item and ran it again, it's hard to see. That person is still there even though we're not setting it this time. If I commented all of this, it would still be there. Yeah. So the only thing on this page right now is that console log local storage, and yet it has this person. So now,
You already did that with local storage.
because it was in local storage, yeah, we put it in local storage in the last time we ran it. So now we want to retrieve it. We go get item. And the key value, which was person. So now we have this string. So now if we want to get the object back, JSON parse and then we have the object back.
So if you translate that, it's
So we had, we're not doing anything, like all of this is commented, so none of this exists. All we're doing is going into local storage. The first thing we do is we go into local storage and we get the value of person, where person is defined here in local storage. This is storage, person is this string. So JSON is equal to this, I should say, JSON string or something. So JSON string is now equal to that string. So we use the JSON utility of parse, JSON parse on that string, which returns an object.
now you're an object.
Now you have an object. And that was all of the assignment for last.
In the solution, Larry had written use window.localStorage that set item, and then you can use it once you get item. And I asked this when I wasn't sure whether that was optional or not. I was curious if there's any reason that you might have chosen to use it and not then use it again, or whether it's just removed.
Window is more explicit, and it prevents, I mean, you shouldn't ever do this, but somebody might say, might define a variable local storage in the local scope, which could interfere with it if it didn't have the window dot.
But otherwise, everything's assumed to be window.
Yeah. All right.
So you're gonna clear your local storage at the end when you're exiting out of the submitted form, it's flushed, you just tack it onto the end.
You can.
Or you don't usually, you just let it hang out.
Yeah, there's usually not a reason to, although
Is that a best practice?
There probably should be, or there is, and I don't know about it.
Okay.
That's a very good question though, because if you don't, then you're just leaving it around.
Like in state C, and you always clean up, you destroy your variables. And then if you're program.
But with local storage, you're not wanting to wipe it out because what's the point of having it? When you get out of the program, the idea is it's stored.
But if it's persistent until the information is completed, and then you no longer need it, because it's the same box, I was thinking it was like back to the database.
Yeah.
Kind of like being an Energy Star program versus not.
So you put like local storage down there.
Yeah. You would do that when you're sure that the user is done using that page, which sometimes it's not clear if they'll ever be done.
When would you use local storage versus a cookie?
I don't use cookies at all anymore since this was made available, because this is significantly easier.
Well, cookies pass data back and forth, but don't they? Whereas local
Yeah, if you're using something on the server,
So
then you would want to have, yeah. But for things that are persistent on the client side, local storage is for that. All right, that was it for the assignments. Now I wanted to go through a couple of things. Oh, yay, that actually goes pretty far. I wanted to go over the difference between array prototype. I wanted to go over the difference between every and map. I wanted to make, well, we already did this, so we probably don't have to do that. I'll talk about using the debugger in JS Fiddle. And function prototypes, which I believe is probably what's going on this week. I don't know if anybody's actually looked at the stuff yet. I'm pretty sure that's what we're getting into.
what about the private, public? Someone's private versus public.
Let's do that next week.
What happens?
The week after.
I thought that you said that was part of our.
Is it? I'm not sure I could give a good example for that right now.
Right.
So every is not a method that comes up very often, but it has like a sister method map, which comes up reasonably frequently. Do we remember what every does? From the homework? It's a function that is a prototype of array, so you have an array, let's say numbers, and when you call every on it, what does this function do?
It goes through the arrays.
executes the function on each value.
Yes. Yeah. It executes the function on each value. And then it returns what is that?
If everything's true, then it's true. If everything's false, or if something is false, it's false. If something, everything is true.
Yes, if everything's true, it's true. If one thing is false, then it returns false. So for this one, I did a check to make sure they're all positive, which is going to return false, right? Because there's a -3 there. Let me make sure that it actually works. Yeah. All right. So that we understand-ish. So what I want to do is I want to go through this list of numbers, this array, and if anything is less than 5, I want to set it to 5. Say there's a minimum, a cutoff, and nothing in that array was supposed to be less than 5. So I could go through it with a for loop, right? The same thing we've been doing for a while. Numbers.length, I++, check each number. If numbers I is less than 5, then numbers I equals 5. That's pretty simple. The other way to do it would be using map. What map does is it goes through every element of the array, it executes this function on it, and it returns a new array that has the function that you executed on it done to each element. So I think the most common example is actually like squaring the numbers. I'll bet if I look up JavaScript array map, the example will be squaring numbers on MDN or W3 schools. Squares equals numbers map function. So just that.
So I'm not sure because why, in the previous example, is it actually returning anything? Because you didn't tell it to return anything, right?
In which, the for loop?
Up there. Yeah.
This for loop?
Yeah.
This for loop isn't a function, so it's not going to return anything. It's just a loop.
It's set.
It's setting the actual array. Yeah. So if we, I just did that twice. That's awesome.
So when I put the numbers in the console log, and then you are
So what's number is going to be right here?
should be everything gets 5.
It should be 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? Yeah. So then after this squares runs, I'm expecting squares to be what?
So you have in that, with that variable squares, and you are using, you're going through the array, and the function's calling, are
This-
those the value it makes an array, are they defined above? I'm a little confused.
These are the default assigned variables for a function in this. In the same way when you used every,
Yeah.
I think when you used every, you just did that, which is fine too. But it can take 3 arguments.
And those are default ones.
Yeah, those are defaults that when you use a function in map, that's what it's expecting. So squares, what kind of variable squares? What kind of data structure? Is it a number? Is it a string? Is it an object? Is it an array?
It's a function.
Is that right? Type of?
Yep.
Type of?
Okay.
It's an object. What is squares? it's an array that has the same number of elements as this, as numbers, but each element is the square of its counterpart.
Because it's taking what you output from the previous.
It's taking,
If
yeah,
statement, and then we put in the console log so we know it's there. And then it's creating these variable squares and saying it's going to equal. Everything you go through is exactly what you do.
it's going to go through every element of the numbers array, and for each element it's going to perform this function on it. It's going to square each element,
Oh, right. And value times the value.
and then each result it's going to add to a new array that we're defining as squares.
It's going to add it to a new array, which it's doing that because of the numbers starting out.
Yes. So if I didn't do this, then numbers would have been the original, and it would have squared the original numbers, which, so that is basically map. I also did the same thing as above with the for loop, where everything that's less than 5, I made 5 in the same way. So numbers.map function. If the value is less than 5, return 5, else return the value. So that's what we had before, 5, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so I've got this array of objects now. This people array. Make sure all the console logs are commented. Okay. It has 4 objects in it. Each object has 2 key value pairs, an F name and an L name. John Doe, Jane Doe, Peter Parker, Clark Kent. I want to use a map to go through that array of people and capitalize their names.
Can you explain to me now, you're creating a variable people, and you're putting in that square bracket because it's going to be an object, right?
This square bracket means it's an array.
Okay, alright, and then,
So squares are always arrays.
Yes.
and then the
And then
curly
this
bracket.
indicates there's an object. So this object, the curly brace. So we know it's an array first. That's the primary structure of it. But in the array, it's got an object, another object, another object, and a 4th object. So 4 objects. If you want to make it clearer, you could do something like that. I should have done that, yes. So, yeah. So I'm going to use map to go through each of these objects and capitalize the names. So how would I do that?
So you're going to do variable cap first. So you want to use, yeah, but dot uppercase, right?
Well, I already wrote this. I wrote this this function here just to make our lives easier, which does that for us. It takes a string and it capitalizes the first letter of that string and lowercases the rest of it.
So you went in and you created the variable cap for us, and you said it's equal to this function with this.
If it makes more sense to you, we can do it like this. Function cap first. No?
I'm not following, because before you said to not do that, right?
Right. I'm just saying that if that makes more sense to you, I'm fine with that.
Well, then it would be the function would be.
There's no difference in this context.
So you make this variable cap first, and then you say it's equal to this function with
This function takes a string
right.
and it
String
returns.
is a command that's just a string, and you're not making it up, right?
No, I'm making up that variable for this function.
String.
Yeah.
str, the str.
str is a made up variable for this
All
function.
right, but you didn't define anywhere.
Let's say we can call it name. I'm fine with that. The first letter equals this. Or maybe word is a better one for that.
And the 0 is the place.
Yeah, substring 0 is the place and 1 is the length, I want to say. Or it doesn't matter in this case. It's the length or the end element. I think it's length. And then
0 is the place in the array, or 0 is the place?
the place in the string if the string were an array, yeah. The first element of the string.
So if the string contains 2 words, it would be that.
Okay, I could never reproduce this because I have no idea what you just did.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I just hate
That's all right.
friends, but I can tell you,
that's
It
okay.
looks simple enough, I have no idea.
So I'm creating a variable, first letter,
Mhm.
and all I'm doing is a substring function on it, getting the first letter, right?
Getting the first letter because you're saying for the 0 place in the array.
And a length of 1,
Length of 1, which would be only the first.
only the first letter, yeah.
Okay. You're gonna make it 2 uppercase.
And then I 2 uppercase that,
And why are the parentheses after that? Because you're calling the function up.
because 2 uppercase is a function, yeah. And then rest of the word, rest, is word substring 1, which means it starts at the 1 position, which is actually the second letter.
Mm-hmm.
And without another number, it just assumes to the end of the word.
Right, so 2 lowercase, but
So
it's
this-
already lowercase, but you're making sure it's.
Yeah, I'm making sure it's lowercase, which is probably a bad thing to do with names, but nobody's ever going to put this anywhere. And then I'm returning the concatenation of first letter and rest. So if I comment that, console log cap first of my name, and run it, I get a syntax error because I haven't been paying attention to something. I'll bet you it's that
So if you
people
click
thing.
on index 71, will that show you where the error is?
Yeah,
Do you need a
kind of.
semicolon after the
Jeez.
first variable?
After which?
There, after the last
You know what? I'll bet I do. Where's the... Okay, console. Clear it. Run it. I was having this issue earlier where even though I was changing something, it wasn't... Oh, I see. I see. I see it. There it is. Boom. Okay. I had missed a paren here. So that is not how to capitalize my name, but that's fine.
But yours is a really fun example, so we could go and walk around with it.
No.
But when you have a name like that, you just have to live with the fact that.
Yeah, you have to live with the fact
you're
that
never gonna-
this function exists all over the place, and I get mail from thousands of people that, well, not thousands.
But you know it's
I get mail from a
standard.
dozen people that use this function on my name constantly.
Then you'll know they're scamming you because they don't know that you're not.
Yeah, or they're my mortgage company.
There you go. I mean, it's good.
So, but if we wanted to make it so that it was accurate, we would go,
We'd probably just avoid doing this and hope that the person inputted it correctly. Input it correctly.
But the other thing you could do if you really wanted to do it for all people whose third letter of their name is capitalized, is then you can make another variable that's third letter and equals word dot substring 2, 3, right?
It would be 2,1, I think. I always get mixed up with substring and substr
2, 1
because the length
you
is
go into
1.
that place and it's a length
Yeah.
of 1 in that place, all right, I get it. 2 uppercase and parentheses, and then you concatenate by putting in first letter plus third letter plus rest, right?
You have to break up the rest.
It would be it's too complex. Yeah. It's too complex to be.
do we explicitly state which ones were capitalized in the upper and do it substring 0, 1, and force in there? The way not to capitalize? Is there
No.
another way to do it?
No.
You probably just wanna work
No,
with-
my name is a special case, and I guess there's a lot of last names that have like a
Right.
that.
So
but-
that's what he's just saying, that if it was like all Irish names. you
Right,
want
yeah.
First and the third letter capitalized, although sometimes it's a fourth.
Yeah, sometimes it's
So
yeah.
It's the imperfect solution.
That's why that's what yeah. You need to have like examples like I don't know O'Brien or MacLeod or
Don't some Irish names only have the second letter lowercase and all the rest capital? Or is that just like a
that's I think that's I don't think that's how they have it on their birth certificates. I think that's how some systems deal with the capitalization.
So that there was the
Yeah.
problem. You make it all capitals, you never have to.
Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. I tried to write this function first so we wouldn't have to discuss it, but that didn't work out. So we've got this cap first function, and we want to do a map that goes through all the people and capitalizes their first name. So who can help me write this? What do I need to write next?
So we need the value, key value.
I need to actually put a function in here. Yeah. Actually, no, I don't. I didn't really think this through, but I might be able to just
All capitals.
call cap first. Maybe. I didn't actually test that.
We need to pass in the string though.
That was that first one.
Yeah.
then
Yeah, but we haven't specified what, is it named word?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what is named in this function. What the first parameter of this function is going to be is the value, right?
But do we need to pass in people? Are we trying to capitalize that people in that array?
Yeah, people.map.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And then console log.
so when you put people.net, you're pulling people and you're saying map everybody to people. And why is cap first in the parentheses? That's what we're
Well, let me do it the way I was going to do it. Value. And then so this function is going to run through each one. For each one, we're going to return cap first value, right?
If we put in a name, could you limit it to executing on just the F name level keys, or would it be, are we not able to do that?
Oh, you know what? This isn't going to work. Because value is an object, right? Yeah. That's why I didn't do it that way. So we're going to need to do an var fname equals what? If value is our object, let's just call this object. Object. What is this? What do I need to write here? Object dot fname, and then var lname. So let's actually run cap first on these. Cap first. So now we have an f name and an l name with that are capitalized as per that method. So now what do we need to return?
name plus out.
Well, we want to return an object, right? Because we're taking in an object. We don't necessarily have to return an object, but
Do we have to return anything, or we just print out capitalized people or string?
we could print it out, but then that would be no different than just running through it. We actually want to create an array of objects.
Oh, I see, if we want to insert it into.
So how would we do that? If return what?
Okay, OBJ has 4 elements to it, right? Each one's an array. We have that same example.
So can you say that again?
Are we working with the data that we had
We're working with this data.
That was-
It's just f name and l name, those 4 objects, each with 2 key value pairs.
So you don't choose to trade people then?
Do you want to split curly braces and mirror the format?
No, no, no. Do we do this for-
And you put plus sign, just return it.
So we're
Because-
making an object.
Yeah, we're making an object.
But
do we need to include a space with an outlet together?
Where?
Name versus last name, or the brand of each other. Do the two work or distinguished?
This is an object. We're not outputting a string, so we're not putting them together. So that should work. It's an array of object, 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 object. First object is John Doe. That's capitalized right. The third object, Peter Parker. Fourth object, Clark Kent. So that seems to have worked.
I don't understand it at all.
Not at all.
This last part I didn't know.
Which part? The fact that I'm returning an object?
Yeah, like why?
I could also write this as var object equals just to be really ridiculous. And then I would be returning object. Does that make more sense? Because I'm creating this object here.
So why would you do this? I mean, in practice, why would you possibly do this?
Why would I do this? If I had a list of, if I had an array of names and I needed it done to all of them, then I would need to do this.
So, but you could put in your if statement to return each name and just print it to the log to return the names and not an object, right?
Well, would you want to then use this information
Yeah,
for something else?
it depends on how you're using it after this. We want to keep it the way it is. Does it make more sense that way? Are you just having trouble with why you would ever do it?
Well, so all right, I get that there might be reasons you should do it. I mean, I don't necessarily define this, but even your, you capitalize the first name, the first letter of the first name, and the first letter of the last name. And then, this whole last part is just to output something, is that it?
This part is putting those f name and l name that we just created into an object.
Right, but the variable capitalized people name because part of it is that I can't see all the code, so I'm not having it on my head.
Basically, it goes to your people.map, right? So people is the original data that we have.
Yeah,
And map is basically does something to all of that data.
right,
And here we're capitalizing the first letter, the first name and last name.
right.
And then capitalized people is that same data after you've performed that function on it.
Oh, okay.
So it's the transformed data.
Mhm.
So unless we wanted to we may not want to overwrite our original data, which is why we're giving it a new name.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, so you're giving the names, you're putting it in a different place. These are the people before, these are the people after. But then when you get variable first name and variable last name. Those were already in the
They were in
original
people.
array.
Exactly.
And so where are we defining the variable there, a first name and last name, of F name and L name?
Yeah, if we go back up to the people object, you can see there that there's F name and L name, right?
Right,
Yeah.
but those aren't defined as variables. They're just.
Those are the keys for the. Those are the keys for that object. And what we're doing here, this might be confusing because I use the same name for everything. If I call this new first name, new L name,
But you could use the same name. It doesn't mean it's the same name.
Right, I kind of wanted to show that you could do this. It might look a little confusing, but it knows because of the format that these are not variables. And it knows because of the format that the right side is going to be a variable in an object.
But they're two different things.
This is a key and this is a value. And you can put quotes around these if you want, but you don't have to.
You don't have to
Because it knows. It knows that in an object, the JavaScript parser knows that in an object, that first thing on the left side of the colon is going to be a key. And it's not going to try to interpret that as a variable.
And when you say variable OBJ, you're just making it up. It could be splunge. You don't care. what it
Right.
is.
Person would probably be a better one for that. Although I do like splunge.
Sponge is my favorite word, actually. I use it very well.
All right. I have a little bit of time left. What did I have after this? I was...
Sponge is always useful.
Will you be
This-
able to share this with us?
Yeah, it's already on the announcement that I put
So
out on
if I can go
Canvas.
back and pull that, this new information we got.
I'll make sure I save what I've done, but it's basically the same.
Oh, I got it right here, that's not on
Oh, you got a first draft. Sorry.
there. Oh.
So what was I doing here? This is all local storage stuff I was going to do, and then so I wanted to quickly do this. I knew I wasn't going to get through it, but I can start it at least. Creating an object as a function, a functional object. So what I want to do is take this object, and instead of making it an object literal, make it a function object. So person equals function. Equals that's not really what I wanted to do.
Isn't that creating default?
Yeah, I don't want to default this.
But you still leave the quotes so that it knows it's expecting a string versus not.
You do what?
You left the quotes, is that to indicate to expect a string, or could you just have not?
That's
put
just
the-
setting the value to nothing, really. We'll do this real kind of fast. So what I've done here is I've created an object JSON that has these three default values. Let's just call it John Doe. And no email. So right now, this JSON object has, and it's a person object with an F name John, an L name of Doe. So it's kind of another way of writing this. But what we can do with this is we can say new person pass it 3 variables. Up here we can expect 3 variables. And now it's going to probably have the correct information in. So this looks identical to what we had earlier in person. So if I output person, and JSON together, we get 2 things that look identical, but there's one difference. Do you see it? The type. This is an object literal. This is just an object, and this is a person object, which is an object literal, but it's also a person object. What we can do with this is create different people using the same format. It's a way to create objects that are the same.
So where you have the variable JSON equals new person. So what is new?
New is a special way to create an object off of a function.
All right, so new is like a command or something? A function? What is it?
New is a
Declaration.
keyword. Yeah. I would call it a keyword, but that's not. It's
to indicate that it's a prototype, right?
It's specifically used. Yeah, that you're creating an object off of it, so it's a prototype of that object.
Okay, and person is what?
Person is an object. It is a function object.
What's the advantage?
Well, it allows you to do things like this. It allows you to create objects quickly.
So why is it not new dot person?
Because we're not, new isn't a variable. It's not something that we're doing something to. We're not doing anything to new. New is like it might as well be a plus sign or something.
In other languages, it means you allocate memory for a variable.
Yeah, it allocates memory for the variable.
So why
It's-
is it person dot new?
It's this, think of it sort of like var, right? Var doesn't do anything except create the variable, right? In the same way, new creates something off of this function. So what was I going to do with this? Add a function to it. So with this, what you can do is, let's create a second person. Oops, what happened?
Do you want person in there still instead of
Yeah.
Django?
No. Person, I was just showing you that it was the same as this object that I had declared up here. But now I want to show you that there's 2 separate objects, JSON and John Doe, that are both person objects that have the same format, first name, last name, email, and have different values in them.
So person is a variable you defined, and it's also saying a person object down below. That person object has nothing to do with the fact that that's a variable above, that you have different names. It's
Well,
just
this
that
one has a capital P.
it's capital P.
Yeah, I probably could have named them better, but I didn't. And-
But that variable person has nothing to do with the fact that that's a person object, right? You could call it variable sponge, but it'd still be a person object, right? If that's a sponge object.
Yeah, you would just have to splunge here and there too. And then if I run that, then we've got two variables
Sponge object.
that are splunge objects. Yeah.
So can this be used to create any kind of list then?
What do you mean?
Instead of using app name, could you use textbook? I don't,
Sure.
do you know what I mean? It can be used for any kind of a list.
What?
It's not person specific.
That's like any kind of data structure that you want to
Okay.
create
Yeah, if
and
I-
reuse many times.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm asking.
Let's say we had something called books. And let's say we added a function to this. We add a function to splunge. Let's call it person here. As much as I like splunge.
Thank you, but it didn't have to be understood.
So if we go person dot prototype dot add book. And we say this dot books dot push because it's an array book. Then we have this function that all person objects have. And so for either JSON or John Doe, we can add a book. Give me a book name, anything.
Shipping use.
Modern Java.
Oh, that's good. Now, if I do that, should see we've got a person object here with a books array with no elements in it. We've got a person object here. This is so terrible. There we go. A person object here with a books array with one element in it of modern JavaScript.
It seems to be a little difference between the textbooks seem to imply that adding things to the prototype after you've created it is like sort of messy coding or like you shouldn't do it, but Larry seemed to imply in the video that it could actually be more efficient to add them after, and I was curious about
As opposed to what? Putting it in.
that, like whether compiling or runtime or so forth, that it actually could be faster to or better to add, to create the person object and then sort of insert these prototype functions or variables after.
You mean like this,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
and the other way would be what?
Like to put it in there from the beginning.
Like that.
Yeah. Whether you felt there was any
Question.
merit to one versus the other.
Well, I never do it that way. I always do it as right after you. I try to keep the person object sort of clean of functions within inside of it and define them outside. I try to keep this is sort of a constructor.
Variables
You just want to set the initial data in this. But I guess you could. It seems like it would be messy to me to put it inside of the. But that could just be a.
Put it inside because then it's like all the stuff relating to the object is together with a class, and maybe it has to do with what.
Usually, you're going to be. Well, most of the time, you're going to be putting these in a file of their own anyway. So they're going to be together regardless.
Do anything with like that it's publicly accessible, the outside versus.
Yes. Let me answer that next week. We're out of time. I was going to do the public-private, not next week. It's 2 weeks from now. Okay. That is all I can do now, I think. Okay.
But you're gonna update this and then we'll link it.
You know what? I'm going to do it right now.
Thank you.
I will. Oh, I got to turn off the thing. So what is it? Who wrote it down for me?
Control, command, to.
Nice. Thank you.
Everyone's I'll throw it down.
You're coming out with the most points.
Jason.
That or not.
No, it's the only answer I can get right all night.
Hold on, it's still going.
Something,
In
right?
other browsers, if you do full screen.